In 2016, India's Chief Justice broke down in full public glare. The event had Chief Ministers, Chief Justices of all High Courts of India, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in attendance, and so were hundreds of cameras. Then Chief Justice of India, Tirath Singh Thakur, had a message for the government: increase the number of judges. Justice Thakur said cases were piling up and there were simply not enough judges to handle the load.
I remember when I was in 5th standard or 6th standard, there used to be a paper of arithmetics. वो पूछते थे सवाल कि अगर एक सड़क पांच आदमी 10 दिन में बनाते हैं तो वही सड़क अगर एक दिन में बनानी हो तो कितने आदमी चाहिए? And the answer used to be 50 आदमी चाहिए. अठतीस लाख 68,000 केसेस. को निपटाने के लिए कितने आदमी चाहिए, कितने जज चाहिए? ये बात हम क्यों नहीं समझते? And therefore, it is not only in the name of the litigant, the poor litigant, people who are languishing in jails, but also in the name of development of this country, its progress, that I beseech you to rise to the occasion and realize that it is not enough to criticize. You cannot shift the entire burden to the judiciary.
Justice Thakur spoke about inaction on part of the government on increasing the number of judges from 21,000 to 40,000. He looked at this as a solution to handle an avalanche of litigation. Then Chief Justice of India Thakur's emotional plea could not go unnoticed. It highlighted the plight of those limited judges who were spending hours every day trying to clear as much backlog as possible. Justice Thakur also highlighted how the lack of speedy justice was affecting the trust of the common man in India's justice system. After all, Tariq pe Tariq is not just a famous movie dialogue. It's a reality for lakhs of litigants across the country. 8 years since Justice T.S. Thakur broke down, what does the picture look like? Hello and welcome, I am Shubham Chauhan. Let's get started. 5 crore 19 lakhs 29,379. That's how many cases are pending in courts in India. As per the Modi government's reply in the Rajya Sabha last month, the Supreme Court has 82,922 cases pending, High Courts has more than 62.28 lakh cases pending, and district and subordinate courts at more than 4.5 crore cases. This includes both civil and criminal cases, from petty theft to property disputes and even critical bail applications. Indian courts have been flooded with pending cases for decades now. In so many cases, a person accused of something is behind bars and the trial just doesn't start because the case volume is so huge. In fact, trial for more than 75% of prisoners has not even begun. Globally, this figure is at 33%. In fact, interestingly, the government is a party in several of the cases. More than 50% of the cases, it's the government which is the party. By one estimate, it would take more than 300 years to clear the backlog in Indian courts given the system we have at the moment. But what is causing this huge backlog? First is precisely what Justice T.S. Thakur had pointed to 8 years back, and so have many judges over the years. Indian courts just do not have enough judges. Second is that there is inadequate judicial staff. Third is lack of adequate funding to ensure infrastructure is upgraded in courts and case records are digitized. Fourth, of course, is more to do with the nature, complexity of cases, quality of evidence, and the speed with which investigative agencies work. Now in this video, let's focus on the shortage of judges bit. India has one of the world's lowest ratios of judges to population, meaning there are just 21 judges for every 10 lakh people in India. For comparison, there are 210 judges for every 10 lakh people in Europe, and in the US, it is 150 per 10 lakh people. A higher judge to population ratio effectively means that the number of cases one judge has to look at is much lesser in number. But that's not the case in India. India has been aiming for 50 judges per million, but that too seems to be a tough ask at the moment. Take for instance Uttar Pradesh, the state that has the maximum backlog in its courts. Earlier this week, a public interest litigation was filed before the Allahabad High Court. This PIL seeks directions for urgent and time-bound filling of judicial vacancies at the High Court. The Allahabad High Court has more than 50% of the judge posts vacant. The sanction strength of the Allahabad High Court is 160 judges. And how many does it have? Only 79. As a result, this High Court has over 11 lakh pending cases. A few days back, lawyers of the High Court decided to protest against this. The Allahabad High Court Bar Association abstained from work for a day. Interestingly, 9 judges originally belonging to this High Court have been transferred to other High Courts, while only 4 judges, including the Chief Justice, have been transferred here. Now, such is the crisis at the Allahabad High Court that even the Supreme Court had weighed in. The judges at the Apex Court expressed concern over the fact that each judge in the Allahabad High Court is handling 15,000 to 20,000 cases. What happened was that a 95-year-old woman whose case was stuck in the Allahabad High Court went to the Supreme Court. She wanted the Apex Court to direct the High Court to hear her second appeal in a civil case at the earliest. A special bench of Justices J.B. Pardiwala and R. Mahadevan said it wouldn't be right to jump the queue for her in the Apex Court since there are many of them. Eventually, it could only direct the High Court Chief Justice to list this matter as soon as possible. And they were right. In fact, we had brought you this story of a woman whose husband was behind bars. She had come to the Madhya Pradesh High Court and praying to the judges to give her a date so that she could arrange her lawyer's expense and arrangements for that particular court hearing. There's also the case of Umar Khalid, who's been languishing in jail for 5 years now under the UAPA law, but his trial hasn't even begun. In fact, pretty curiously, the same Supreme Court that we just told you about last week made a rare comment. A lawyer highlighted the extensive delays faced by bail petitions, often extending up to months. A plea was made to the court to issue directives for expediting trials in such cases. The court, the Supreme Court that is, refused to give any such direction. It went on to say that because the accused in question was behind bars, there was peace in the state of Bihar. Now surely, the case history could be whatever it is, but this remark of the court itself did become a talking point. But the larger point being that this sorry tale of high pending cases and fewer judges is there in other high courts too. Take Punjab and Haryana High Court for instance. Out of 85 judges, only 51 are there in the High Court currently. The 3 of them are in fact set to retire soon, and there's no clarity at the moment as to when new judges would come. Data shows that 30% of the cases in this High Court have remained unsolved for 5 to 10 years and 29% for over a decade. Right? Such is the dire state of affairs that the High Court Collegium, that is the Punjab and Haryana High Court Collegium headed by Chief Justice Sheel Nagu, recommended 15 district and session judges for elevation to the High Court. Reportedly, this is the first time that as many as 15 names from this category have been recommended in one go. Which brings us to the other aspect. What's holding up this delay? What is causing this delay? Timely approval from the powers that be. In the case of High Court and Supreme Court, names of judges are recommended by what's called a collegium. It comprises the Chief Justice and the senior most judges. Once the names are recommended, they are sent to the government for approval. The government then does thorough checks before clearing the names of the judges. In recent years, the Supreme Court has on multiple occasions requested the centre to clear names at the earliest and even asked why these names weren't being cleared at a great speed. In 2024, the Attorney General of India, R. Venkataramani, appearing for the centre, told the Supreme Court that sensitive material with the government is delaying the clearance of the Apex Court Collegium's recommendations for appointments of Chief Justices to some High Courts. Basically, the Union government has several times just sat on the names sent by the Collegium and not cleared them for reasons they know best. In the last CJ, that is D.Y. Chandrachud's tenure, 15% of names proposed by the Collegium for High Court elevation were not cleared by the government. So forget increasing the number of judges. Indian courts are still struggling to keep up with the existing sanctioned number. So what are the possible solutions then? One was given by the Supreme Court itself in January 2025. The Apex Court suggested appointing ad hoc judges to address the growing backlog. This means temporarily appointing retired judges as per requirement of that High Court. Article 224A of the Indian Constitution does allow the Chief Justice of a High Court to request retired High Court judges to perform the duties of a judge again, of course with the permission of the President of India. However, this ad hoc judge system has rarely been invoked in India's case. The Apex Court in January 2025 also suggested modifying its own decision in 2021, which held that ad hoc judge appointments could only be made in certain situations. The other possible solution is an interesting one too. Supreme Court advocate Gautam Bhatia suggested that the Supreme Court, he was talking about the Supreme Court, he said that the Supreme Court must limit its jurisdiction and focus on clarity and consistency in its judgments. In a piece he wrote in 2019 published by the Hindustan Times, Bhatia said that the framers of our constitution initially believed the Supreme Court must decide constitutional cases, disputes between states and the centre, or substantial questions of law, especially where there was a disagreement between different high courts. Bhatia points out that the Apex Court spends considerable time hearing whether a petition must be admitted in the Apex Court for a full hearing or not. Most of them are about minor matters, from motor vehicle disputes to rent control litigation. As a result, the Supreme Court is clogged hearing matters it ideally should not be hearing. In fact, he argues to the contrary when it comes to adding the number of judges. Gautam Bhatia writes, expanding the number of judges at the Supreme Court is bound to have negative repercussions. The first problem is that of consistency. As the final word on the interpretation of laws, the Supreme Court must provide a clear, coherent, and consistent jurisprudence. This is why in most countries, Supreme Court judges number between 7 and 12, and they often sit together. At its present strength, the Indian Supreme Court is already struggling with this problem. Sitting in 14 benches of 2 or 3 judges, this polyvocal character of the Supreme Court has often led to confusion and inconsistency in interpretation of laws. That's all we have for this report. Do like and share this video, comment and let us know what your views are on the shortage of judges, on the Indian judiciary at large, and of course subscribe to HW News English on YouTube for more such videos. Thanks for watching.
Stay ahead with our cutting-edge news app. Instantly access the latest shorts in just 1 minute and breaking news in just 50 words. Download now for a smarter, faster news experience.